Iawn. Iawn. Pnawn da, yn enw i di cynghorydd Gwenol Elis a fi di cadeirydd Pwyllgor Trosolwg a Chraffu Addysg a Sgiliau. Ymddiheuriadau am fod ychydig yn hwyr yn dechrau pnawn yma oherwydd trafferthion technegol. Na i fynd ymlaen efo'r I'll go on with the introduction, because you're familiar with that. Hoffwn groesawu pawb i'r cyfarfod heddiw sy'n gyfarfod aml leoliad. Siarad mynd gario ymlaen? Ydy pawb adre yn cael trafferth yng nghlywed i hefyd? Llyth rwy'n gadarnhau hynny os gwelwch yn dda?
Na, da chi digon clir ar Zoom.
Diolch yn fawr. Yeah, what I suggest is I'll finish this part in Gymraeg and then, you know, it'll be just as usual and then I'll speak in English for when you need to be introduced. Okay? Felly, hoffwn groesawu pawb i'r cyfarfod heddiw sydd yn gyfarfod aml leoliad. Welcome to Steve Williams, who is a parent governor at Ysgol John Bright and who's here today as an observer because he hasn't had the induction yet, but welcome, Steve. Bydd yr holl gyfarfodydd sy'n agored i'r cyhoedd yn cael ei recordio a'i ffrydion fyw a byddant ar gael i'w gwylio wedi'r cyfarfod dod i ben. Os bydd y ffrydio byw yn methu, bydd y cyfarfod yn parhau a bydd y recordiad ar gael trwy wefan y cyngor ar ôl i'r cyfarfod dod i ben. Hoffwn atgoffa'r aelodau bod cyfleusterau cyfieithu ar y pryd ar gael a bod angen i'r rhai sy'n mynychu o bell ddewis eu iaith. I'r rhai sy'n dymuno siarad yn y siambr, codwch eich llaw. I'r rhai sydd yn mynychu o bell, defnyddiwch y swyddogaeth codi llaw. Bydd siaradwyr yn y siambr ac mynychwyr o bell yn cael eu gwahodd i siarad bob yn ail. I'r rhai sy'n mynychu o bell, cofiwch nad oes modd i'r rhai yn y siambr ddefnyddio'r cyfleuster sgwrsio. Mae gofyn i aelodau'r Pwyllgor gadw eu camerâu ymlaen yn ystod trafodaethau ac wrth bleidleisio mwyn cynnal cywirdeb y broses gwneud penderfyniadau. Os ydych yn gorfod gadael y cyfarfod dros dro, rhowch neges yn y swyddogaeth sgwrsio fel bod y swyddog gwasanaethau democrataidd yn gwybod ac yna rhowch wybod i ni pan fyddwch chi nôl. Dwi'n disgwyl i bawb sy'n bresennol ac sy'n cymryd rhan yn y cyfarfod yma ymddwyn yn briodol a pharchu gilydd. A mae hyn yn berthnasol i aelodau, swyddogion ac unrhyw un sydd yn y galeri cyhoeddus. Cyn i ni symud ymlaen at yr rhaglen, before we move on to the programme for this afternoon, I'd like to thank Councillor Hannah Feet for chairing this committee over the past 2 years. Thank you very much, Hannah. It's working, da iawn. Felly, yr eitem gyntaf sydd gennym ni pnawn yma ydy penodi is-gadeirydd. Mae'n edrych yn wag iawn yn fan hyn ar hyn o bryd. Oes gennym ni gynnig?
Chair.
Councillor Carol Beard.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to propose Councillor Kay Redhead for the Vice Chair, please. Thank you.
Diolch. Da ni wedi cael enw cynghorydd Kay Redhead. Os gynna ni eilydd, do we have a seconder? Cynghorydd Hannah Fleet, diolch yn fawr.
Diolch yn fawr. Many years ago, I worked with Kay doing some volunteer training and supporting families with new babies. She was committed to supporting children then. She still is now. She's passionate and very involved in education, and I highly recommend her for this role.
Diolch, Hannah. Oes gen rhywun enw, ail enw? Oes rhywun eisiau cynnig enw arall? Na, dyna ni. Os ydyn ni'n hapus i groesawu cynghorydd Kay, nawr ni roed dangos yn hynny, os gwelwch yn dda. Dyna ni, mae hynny yn unfrydol llongyfarchiadau cynghorydd Kay, a dwch chi fyny i fan hyn. Come in, come and join me here. Reit, eitem 2. Ymddeiriadau am absenoldeb.
Just one apology from Councillor Dave Jones.
Diolch. Eitem 3. Datgan cysylltiad mewn materion ar yr agenda. Oes rhywun angen datgan cysylltiad? Na. Dyna fo, diolch yn fawr. Eitem 3. Materion brys. Dydw i ddim yn ymwybodol o unrhyw fater brys. Diolch. Eitem 4. Cofnodion. Dyn ni angen cymeradwyo a llofnodi cofnodion y cyfarfod diwethaf fel cofnod cywir. A mi oedd y cyfarfod hwnnw ar y 5 o Fawrth. A mae o'n eich pecyn chi tudalen 3 i 7. Oes gennym ni gynigydd, os gwelwch yn dda. Cynghorydd Frank yn cynnig ag eilydd, cynghorydd Austin. Nid pawb ddangos bod ni'n gytun. Diolch yn fawr. Eitem 6. Cofnodion y fforwm cyllideb ysgolion. Derbyn cofnod y fforwm cyllideb ysgolion y gynhalwyd ar y 4 ar 10 o fis Mawrth gwybodaeth. Gawn ni gynigydd, os gwelwch yn dda, i nodi'r cofnodion. Cynghorydd Hannah Fleet, diolch yn fawr yn cynnig. Os gennym ni eilydd. Cynghorydd Anne McCaffrey yn eilio. Pawb dangos, os gwelwch yn dda. Diolch yn fawr. Eitem 7, cwestiynau i aelodau'r cabinet, a does na ddim cwestiynau. Eitem 8, adolygu'r rhaglen waith. Tudalennau 18 i 61 yn y pecyn, a mae yr eitem yma i'w gyflwyno gan Dawn Hughes, swyddog gwasanaethau Chraffu a Pwyllgor.
Diolch, Gwenol, and apologies for all the technical difficulties this afternoon. So we got there near enough in the end. I haven't got much of an update, actually, just to say that obviously following the pre-election period, we rescheduled all our meetings. So obviously the forward plans had to move on. So the forward plan is as is on pages 18 to 23 for this committee. And just a reminder that we do have another Education and Skills Committee next Tuesday, the 16th of July at 5 o'clock. That's it. Happy to take any questions?
Diolch, Dawn. Nawn ni gymryd cwestiynau, ond hoffwn i atgoffa'r aelodau mai dim ond pynciau sy'n berthnasol i gylch gwaith y pwyllgor yma fel enw ei codi. Os oes gen aelodau'r pwyllgor unrhyw eitemau hoffent ei gweld ar y rhaglen gwaith i'r dyfodol, gofynnaf iddyn nhw anfon y ffurflen cynnig pwnc craffu perthnasol dros e-bost i'r swyddog gwasanaethau craffu a pwyllgorau, a gellir ei ystyried wedyn yn erbyn y meini prawf blaenoriaethau sydd wedi cymeradwyo yn y modd priodol. Oes na unrhyw gwestiynau? Cynghorydd Anne McCaffrey.
Thanks, Chair. Dawn, just on page 19, is it, I think, which is the task and finish groups associated with our Scrutiny Committee. Can we add in the Strategic Schools Planning Group there, which met for the first time last week?
Yeah, I can do that and I can put the membership on that. That's absolutely
Okay.
fine.
Thanks, Dawn.
Diolch cynghorydd Anne. Cynghorydd
Yeah.
Julie.
Diolch. Yeah, that's a cabinet members working group as opposed to a task and finish group from this committee. So I think we just need to be clear around that. Whilst obviously once we've completed the work over, I should imagine, a number of months, then we will give an update to the committee. It's not actually a task and finish group that's part of this committee. So I think we just need to be clear. It's a cabinet working group, cabinet member working group.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Dawn?
Councillor Julie. Yeah, in that case, what we'll do, we'll put it on the overall committee forward work programmes. That's where we normally put cabinet working groups, and so we'll put it on that one to make it clear it is a cabinet working group.
Yes.
Thanks,
so-
Dawn.
Thank you. Unrhyw un arall? No? There we are. Felly, gawn ni gynigydd ag eilydd os gwelwch yn dda i gytuno ar y rhaglenni gwaith i'r dyfodol. Cynghorydd Austin yn cynnig. Gawn ni eilydd. Cynghorydd Tristan Lewis yn eilio. Wneith pawb ddangos i codi llaw os gwelwch yn dda i ddangos bod ni'n gytun. Diolch yn fawr. Eitem 9A. Cymunedau cynaliadwy ar gyfer dysgu. Tudalennau 62 i 119. Bydd aelod Cabinet Addysg yn cyflwyno'r adroddiad yma a bydd y rheolwr strategol rheoli eiddo a safleoedd addysg a phennaeth gwasanaethau addysg yn mynd trwy'r adroddiad. Cynghorydd Julie.
Diolch. Yeah, so, let me just take those out for a minute. So yeah, the Sustainable Communities for Learning programme, and we've had lots of discussion around this over recent years, and for older members like myself, you'll remember it as the 21st Century Schools before that. Welsh Government have requested that all local authorities provide them with a 9-year strategic outline plan, the SOP, as you'll hear it referred to, identifying areas and projects that they would like to develop, or that we would like to develop as part of our Sustainable Communities for Learning programme. I mean, it's a really great opportunity. This is about looking at schools as not just an educational facility, but an opportunity for it to really be part of the community. Obviously, John's going to go through the detail in the report now. There are numerous things we need to consider, but certainly we need to consider the financial perspective. Whilst this is the SOP as it stands currently, you know, my hope is that perhaps more money will be made available going forward, and we could revisit this. Anne touched on the group that we had our first meeting last week, where we're actually looking at the school footprint. It may be that as we move through that, that we look at other suggestions as well. So, you know, whilst this is before you today, it's very much a piece of work that's here currently, that certainly if we feel that we have priorities that change, or other things, like I said, financial, that come up over time, then there'll be the opportunity for this to shift and change. But I just want to highlight as well the massive amount of work that the Sustainable Communities for Learning, headed up by John, have completed. You know, you'll be aware that what was referred to as the Band B before had a number of areas as part of that, and then the team have done a lot of work to look at where our priorities need to be, because this has been a number of years that this has been ongoing, and John and each of the team members have worked incredibly hard to come up with what's before you today and make sure that we can make an informed decision. So I just want to give my thanks really to John and the team for that. But yeah, and I'm happy to pitch in and answer any questions as we go through, but I'll let John go through the actual report with you first. Diolch.
Diolch cynghorydd Julie. Nawn ni drosodd wan i John. Diolch.
Cadeirydd. Thank you, Councillor Julie. Prynhawn da pawb, good afternoon everyone. The report in front of you today details Conwy's 9-year strategic outline programme for our Sustainable Communities for Learning programme and investment in our school estate. As Councillor Julie touched upon, the first wave of investment was under the banner of the 21st Century Schools and Education and represented a partnership between local authorities and Welsh Government to rebuild and refurbish educational establishments across Wales. In January 2022, the programme was renamed Sustainable Communities for Learning to make a clear statement about the commitment towards the environment, community cohesion and our future generations. Educational transformation will remain a vital outcome of our investment in the programme, and we also recognise that it is hugely important that we address the condition and efficiency of our school buildings here in Conwy. The new Strategic Outline Programme will initiate the start of a 9-year flexible rolling programme. This will encourage a smooth transition and remove the stop-start actions associated with fixed-term bans. A 9-year capital programme is required to be submitted to the Welsh Government for consideration towards providing a commitment and support for the first 3 years, along with in-principle support for years 4, 5 and 6, and years 7 to 9 will reflect our longer-term project pipeline. Your agenda pack today includes our new 9-year strategic outline programme and a brief presentation about how we've arrived at where we are today, along with proposed projects and areas to review. Each individual project will in turn come back to scrutiny and Cabinet for formal sign-off once we have a clear brief and proposed costs of works for each project. Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. Hapus I ateb unrhyw gwestiynau yn Gymraeg neu'n Saesneg. Diolch.
Diolch yn fawr, John. Oes gen rywun mater I godi neu rhywbeth I drafod? Cynghorydd Joe Nuttall.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Can I ask when the asbestos was first discovered in area specifically, and why has the repair and maintenance grant been used elsewhere, please, when it was obviously very important that was used in that area?
Diolch. John?
Diolch. The overall works in areas was significantly higher than what we first envisaged. The capital R&M grant wouldn't have covered all that work, Councillor Joe. So we have been working closely with Ysgol Areas, now the head and the business manager there, to put together what we feel the best way forward for Ysgol Areas and that site. And we've had further discussions with the Welsh Government about the proposal, which we identified as we should be putting it as part of our Sustainable Communities for Learning programme, and not perhaps just looking at asbestos removal, but at the same time looking at improvements for that site.
Diolch yn fawr, John. Councillor Joe, are you happy with that response?
Yeah, I am disappointed, but yeah, going forward, just want to keep an eye on. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr. Anybody else? Councillor Paul.
Thank you for letting me speak, Chair. I'm not a member of this committee.
Could Councillor Paul put his mic on, please?
I welcome this document and the strategy, and I acknowledge that it is expedient and pragmatic and deals with the most immediate priorities. But there is a big but, and the big but is, and Julie referenced it in her remarks, are we going to be able to do more? And I know in terms of us doing more, that means borrowing more money, paying more interest, increasing, in a sense, the revenue account, and probably mean additional council tax. But I think now that the argument has been won about the inefficiency and ineffectiveness because of the 3,000 unfilled school places, and also the declining population, which is referenced in the documents, and I welcome that because I think that's important to the background. I welcome the Cabinet subcommittee. I would have liked to have been on it, but so be it. The issue for me is, in my area, for example, we're not even in the 9-year programme now. We were hopeful under the old programme that we were going to get a new primary school in Abergele. And obviously when the figures came out and it was going to cost £31.5 million, I'm not surprised Welsh Government balked at that. But the reality is, and I welcome again, because I've been banging on about it for the 2 years I've been on the council, about the amalgamation of schools on the Abergele site. So I welcome that those discussions and actions are now ongoing. But I do worry, if you like, about almost the modesty of these proposals when you see the extent of the problems that we're facing. I know I accept GoGarth and Erius are the priorities, and that's fine, but it is worrying, the overall context in which we're working, and that many areas where we do need to push on with further, in my view, federation, amalgamation, to make things more efficient and effective. That's not in this programme. And I accept it's pragmatic, but it is disappointing, and I would hope that the Cabinet would look at, and I know it probably will mean additional council tax, but I think we need to be able to do more, even over this first 3-year period.
Thank you for your thoughts and observations, Councillor Paul. I think Councillor Julie would like to respond.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Yes, thanks, Paul. I think really, certainly in terms of, you talk about being modest in terms of the proposals that are put forward. I guess certainly from my perspective, lesson learned in so much as I think it's better to move forward with a plan like this that is achievable and then hope to add to it. Because as you've said, we had a number of areas that were in the what was the Band B before, and obviously due to things that were beyond our control in terms of whether that's COVID-19, the cost of materials, so many things meant that we're in a position that was completely unachievable in the end. So I think we're better to start at this, and the hope is, as I said before, that perhaps more funding will become available. I should imagine, obviously, we've got a new Minister for Education in Cardiff. We now obviously have the new government, and I believe that Keir Starmer has mentioned perhaps investment in school buildings. So I think there are a number of things that we need to know before we then perhaps revisit this. But yeah, I appreciate what you're saying, but I've learned that raising that expectation, we had consultation before, it's difficult then to come back from that and for people to understand why that's the case. And then in terms of federalisation, amalgamation, that wouldn't form part of this programme. This is the SOP that's going to Welsh Government around the programme of either improvements or new builds for schools that will take place elsewhere in terms of federalisation, amalgamation. Lowry, what would that come through on? That will come through scrutiny again at some point, won't it? I can't remember which report that, but those conversations are being had, obviously, in terms of when that information is shared publicly. It's not something that you can do before the appropriate discussions have taken place with schools, with governing bodies, with staff, obviously using HR. It's a very sensitive area, but yeah, that wouldn't fall in with this. That's a separate thing. This is about the buildings and the SOP for Welsh Government, but I don't know if Lodi wants to touch on that last point. Diolch.
Yeah,
Cadeirydd,
Lowry Brown.
yn nhermau prosiectau mae Julie yn cyfeirio atyn o ran yr fedraleiddio neu amalgymeiddio. Yn enwedig efo'r ysgolion, da ni yn edrych ar ei weithio efo nhw i amalgymeiddio ac yn benodol rwan ysgolion babanod ac ysgolion iau a dod â nhw at ei gilydd i un ysgol cynradd. Fasa rhaid i ni gael cymeradwyaeth cabinet i fynd allan i ymgynghori ac yna ar ddiwedd y cyfnod ymgynghori fydda ni'n dod yn ôl i cabinet ac wrth gwrs craffu cyn hynny i gael cymeradwyaeth i symud yn swyddogol ymlaen gyda'r amalgymeiddio i un ysgol. Felly yndi, mae hynny'n dod drwy'r broses democrataidd.
Diolch yn fawr iawn i chi am egluro, Dr Lowry and you, Councillor Julie, thanks for clarifying. And, can I just remind people to stick to what's in the agenda and on which report we're discussing today, because that wasn't in the report. I'd wish you wouldn't bring up things that aren't in the report. Yeah. No, I'll get back to you later. Nesa cynghorydd Penny, os gwelwch yn dda.
Diolch yn fawr for letting me speak. I'm not on this committee. I'm talking as a resident and a town councillor looking at this report. Pwyllgor area is now going to wait 7 to 9 years.
Councillor Penny, we're not hearing you very well.
Sorry, is that better?
Much better, thank you.
Thank you. Many apologies. Well, I'm talking as a resident and also a town councillor. I'm really disappointed that Pwyllgor area is now on long-term 7 to 9 years. We've got over 300 houses to be built in the next 4 years. And I believe that should put us above certain schools that are listed as a priority. We've been promised now a new school, as I know we all have, and we're all active councillors in our ward. But I'm really disappointed that it is a long-term 7 to 9 years. And I know that when I go back to town council and tell them that, and it gets filtered down to schools, there will be major disappointment from our community, which we depend on. Thank you, Chair, for letting me speak. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Penny. John is going to respond to that.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Councillor Penny, just to clarify really, the Pwyllgor area is down for a medium-term review, years 4 to 6, and that review will start from now really in years 1 to 3 to look at what project and what brief we want to carry out in the Pwyllgor area. So just to clarify really, the Pwyllgor area is in our medium-term planning years 4 to 6.
And not in 5 to 7 as documented. 7 to 9 actually.
7 to 9 is the Llandudno area, for clarity.
Sorry, John. Sorry, Pwyllgor area. Okay, long term 7 to 9. I'm reading that incorrectly, obviously.
I can confirm that, yes, I've read what John is saying, in the report. It is in the second round.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chraffu. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Right, mae 'na nifer fawr o bobl eisiau siarad. Nesa, na i fynd yn ôl i'r siambr at y cynghorydd Keith Eales.
Diolch, Chair. I'm sort of echoing Councillor Paul. I don't want to sort of go over everything again, but my main concerns are where schools have been going through the process, Ysgol Llandyles and obviously Abergele, they're all in Band B for school redevelopment. The problem that we've got is that we've been using sticking plasters basically as a process on the basis that schools are going to get rebuilt, and it's dragged on and on and on. And now we've got another. I'm not blaming the council and the officers have done very well to get where they are, and Gary Williams as well. Has done very, very well, trying to keep everything open and running. I'm disappointed really, and the Welsh Government would have seen this coming down the line in regard to funding for schools. Obviously, the rollout of I don't want to get too political, but it sticks in my throat that 35 million went on the 20-mile-an-hour limit. But we've got kids falling over in schoolyards, ripping their knees open because tarmac is past its use by date or their lifetime of sort of safety, really. We've got asbestos in schools. There's asbestos on the flooring in Llandillas. We'll monitor it, we'll remove any breakages. Kids in the 21st century shouldn't have to be learning in these conditions. The heating is going out through the roofs of the old schools that were built donkeys years ago. I do commend the officers on what they're doing, but I think this does need really reiterating to the Welsh Government. The funding does, it needs re-looking at from that level, really, because we're at the mercy of material costs and everything, which I can well understand why some of these projects, but I just wanted to go there that also we should be thinking of children and the conditions that they're actually in at the moment learning. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you for that observation, and it does state in this report, that some schools will be disappointed. And does anybody want to respond to Councillor Eales? Councillor Julie?
Yeah, I share your frustration, completely understand it after years of being excited about the opportunities we had and the changes that we were likely to make. And I've certainly challenged Welsh Government, raised the issue. Funding has swapped and changed. I don't even know if the MIM project funding even exists anymore, but I think they are going to have to look at that going forward. And I'm more than happy, as I said before, we've got a new Minister for Education now. I'm more than happy to raise this directly with her. But yeah, I agree. It is frustrating, but I don't know if John wants to comment, but certainly in terms of that maintenance grant, then priority is going to be given to those schools who it was, like you say, a sticking plaster for some time, because the hope was that we would have a shiny new school there. So I know that many of those schools' work has come out of the R&M grant in the last few months, and I don't know if John wants to comment on where we're at with those, but obviously any funding that comes, we will make those a priority.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to add to what Julie was saying, in Cabinet, October the 10th, 2023, we agreed in that paper that any schools that weren't brought forward that would have priority under the capital R&M works. Clearly, it won't be a new school. However, we'll work with those head teachers and those senior leadership teams of those schools to see what the priorities are and to see what works affordable within what funding we have, and to see what works a priority for a school, for schools and for us as a local authority as well. Diolch.
Just before we move on, gai ddod a Jenny Williams I mewn yn fan hyn, os gwelwch yn dda.
Diolch yn fawr. It was just to come back. I was going to update our capital programme board that meets this week. We've just had a national sort of board looking at the future investments, so the MIM model, the mutual investment model, and capital. The board discussed sort of a range of options to councils going forward, and it's pleasing to see that at least we have a range of our primary school projects that feature in our plan still on the list for any mutual investment model funding that comes forward. There is, however, capital available, but we have to match fund. So I think, again, it comes back to our council's capital programme and looking at what we prioritise going forward. And I think we'll work, won't we, John, as a team to put forward those projects as capital investment that matches anything that Welsh Government can offer. But again, yeah, there's a lot of sort of areas of priority, isn't there, within the programme? We have a little bit of funding in our current capital programme for schools, but nowhere near, if I may say so, other North Wales authorities. So we're the only North Wales authority at present who has a range of programmes still within, or projects, sorry, the capital, the MIM model. Others have sought to invest as councils, taking the opportunity of capital funding per se. So there's a lot in the mix, and I think when we come to the next business planning round, I think it's as officers we have responsibility to show and demonstrate what what we could develop with some of our own funding. Diolch.
Diolch yn fawr i'r swyddogion am ateb mor llawn. Councillor Eales, are you happy or satisfied?
Yeah, well, we haven't really got a lot of options, so we really, because everybody needs something doing on their schools. And I just feel that sometimes if we'd have addressed the issues at the schools when they've been first identified, rather than, so going back when the programme was in place, it was the schools on there. If I understand with hindsight, the Welsh Government said, yeah, the MIM project and everything like that is coming forward. But when they still hadn't appointed the partner, 2 years down the line, you sort of had an idea on where this was going. And now, rather than all the schools having half dozen faults, they've probably got 24 faults and major issues as well, you know. And I just think if we'd have, I don't know, it's like waiting for the funding, and then all of a sudden, after we waited years, it doesn't come forward. So I totally understand, and I know where we're at with this. I am really disappointed, but I'm trying to be realistic about this as well. But going back and telling the schools as a governor is, it, you know, we have to hang ourselves out to dry to them, you know. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Anne McCaffrey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, I won't go on, but, you know, I completely share Councillor Keith's frustration. Ysgol Capel his school has now been removed from the list. We were the first on the list, and we were the first to do the consultation with the community. So there's a really going to be a real naffed off community in this side of the county when obviously they hear that a school that's 115 years old that was built in 1912 that really is not particularly fit for purpose and has young children going up and down 5 different flights of stairs, you know, throughout the day, isn't even in the mix really. But you know, I also understand the total sort of financial picture, but I just want to put on record I'm really disappointed too. But a couple of questions that I have got is on page 114 we've got the financial implications sort of figures there that show that it's just under £18 million of a capital contribution from Conway, and that's for both for the 9-year programme. Is any of that money already within the budget sort of decisions that have been made, or is this 17.775 million to hit future capital discussions and expenditure?
Can we just answer that question first, Councillor Anne? Yeah, we'll answer that question first. Who's going to respond? John.
Diolch, Councillor Anne. Diolch, Cadeirydd. You're right, obviously there are financial implications, revenue and capital for the overall programme, and that's part of the strategic outline plan really. We have to put an indication of costs for each programme down in the SOP. So we have an indication of what work we want to do in what area and a proposal of costs. And the next stage, once the SOP is hopefully approved by Cabinet and approved then by Welsh Government, we will look at these costs in more detail for each individual project and each individual areas. And as part of those project briefs that we will be bringing back to scrutiny and Cabinet for individual approval, they will have more detailed financial costs aligned with those projects and financial implications. And that will also have our accountancy team and officers as part of that meeting to answer any details and questions on how these projects will be financed. But these are indicative costs at the minute for proposed projects in these areas. Yeah.
Councillor Anne, your second question?
Well, I'd just like to respond to John first of all for it. So to be clear, John, from what you're saying, and I understand that there are indicative costs patently, and obviously we've had indicative costs before. So are we yet to bear the full brunt of, if the final cost, let's say, is 17.7 million, are we yet to bear the full brunt of that on our capital programme for coming years? Because there's no money being reserved since we've been thinking about this and planning for this for some time. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Thanks very much. Second question is, I understand you've got sort of 3 phases, short, medium and long term. I'm not quite sure I understand why Llandudno area has been prioritised for the first time, as I understand it, within this programme, because, you know, there are a lot of schools that we've got 5 areas in the county, and there are significant issues in some of them more than others, and I don't really understand why the priority is being given to Llandudno here. I do understand and welcome Julie's comment about, because it's obviously distant, some 6 years distant, that in actual fact there's flexibility in terms of where we actually spend future monies in that year 7 to 9. But can you just give me further clarity on why Llandudno is considered such a priority over, for example, Abergele area that Council Paul has just talked about?
Yeah, thank you.
Yep, happy to do that, Councillor Anne. The Llandudno area was down for review as part of our original Band B programme, and actually we decided not to progress it as part of Band B, but to review it under Band C. Now, as this report shares, the works with bands have now disappeared, and now that it is a flexible 9-year programme. In the Llandudno area, we have 7 or 8 Conwy schools, primary, secondary and special school, along with a Prw there. So we feel that in that area, as a pipeline project, and I have to kind of, you know, just stress that these are pipeline projects, especially in years 7 to 9. It is difficult enough to try and work and progress with our priority projects in years 1 to 3, believe me, without second guessing how much funds we will have in years 7 to 9 and what works in what area will need to be done in years 7 to 9. So we've kept it vague. We haven't shared any specific schools or anything like that. But I think as we currently stand, and based on a number of drivers that are listed as part of the works that we look at here, capacity, unfilled places, school reorganisation, the WESP, the Welsh language promotion that Conwy obviously and nationally that we are promoting towards the 1 million learners, that we feel that the Llandudno area is an area that we would like to explore further in the long term, years 7 to 9. Diolch.
Thank you, John. Diolch. Cynghorydd Frank, Councillor Frank.
Thank you, Chair. And it's a very good debate, and it's a very good report. We can't tear ourselves apart from where we are. We've had COVID, we've had Brexit, we've had the Ukraine war, we've projects that the original price in 2019, we can't afford to pay for them in 2024. That is a fact. That is a fact. COVID's not away. There's a new strain of COVID coming in, and people have been told to go and get injections for it. It's a new strain. So COVID's not away. So we have invisible things that we can't see going to affect education. A lot of the conversation today has been in buildings. Now, in 2012, I was elected as the governor of Gogarth. And I loved that. I loved that until I fell out with the chair and I left in 2019. But in 2012, we were designing, and I was part of that, a new school. It opened in 2014 for about 170 pupils, if I remember correctly. We complained about the car park. The car park wasn't built big enough. So the cars went on to Nansagama Road, which adjoins the school. Then the planning committee decided to build 49 houses there. So we have a school that is defunct as far as car parking goes. So I was delighted to read that you're going to extend Gogarth, because this doesn't just hit the education capacity or the education group. It hits the financial group, because we can't afford that people who are disabled ALN that need to go out the county. We just can't afford it. The cost is enormous. So I'm delighted that you're going to have a look at the car park. I'm delighted you're going to build another 2 classrooms onto it, because at the moment they're prefabricated. And really, there's 60% disabled people in this county. There's really up to 22% in every school. It's so big and it's a growth area. The children have rights, they have a right to education, and I commend every teacher who gives them the training, the learning and the care. It's so compassionate, and I applaud all the officers who realise that I talk from my heart for people who have got no voice. Thank you, John, and thank the officers for this. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Frank. I know you're very passionate about Ysgol y Gogarth and you speak passionately. And of course, children from many of our wards attend Ysgol y Gogarth, and it's very close to our hearts as well. Thank you very much. Diolch. Cynghorydd Austin.
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. Gai yn gyntaf llongyfarchu ar eich penodiad fel Cadeirydd Pwyllgor yma, ac hefyd llongyfarch Cynghorydd C ar ei penodiad fel is-Gadeirydd, a diolch i'r Cynghorydd Hannah am ei gwaith yn ystod y 2 flynedd yn cadeirio'r Pwyllgor yma. Gai hefyd ddiolch i John am yr adroddiad, a hoffwn i gynnig bod ni'n mynd gyda'r argymhelliad. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch yn fawr, Cynghorydd Austin. Dydw i ddim yn gweld. Mae gennym ni un berson sydd yn barod i siarad cyn bod ni'n mynd i ofyn am eilydd i gynnig Cynghorydd Austin. Cheryl Carlyle, Councillor Cheryl Carlyle.
Diolch and congratulations, Cadeirydd, and to Councillor Kay as well. I've got 2 questions, please. The first one is building on what Councillors Joe and Keith said. It was about, in the report, you say there's significant investment needed in our schools, and we all know that. We're all governors and know this very well. So I was asking really how, why the 540,000 was wired from the R&M budget, the repair and maintenance budget, when we clearly needed this investment in all our schools. We've heard about asbestos and all sorts of things. And that was my first question, please.
I think John, yes, John is going to answer.
I think that's been discussed outside.
Well, I was going to say, I think we've had that.
I don't think that we need to take that any further. If that's okay.
Yes, I agree with you, John. That question has been answered, hasn't it? Yeah, the beginning of this debate. Do we have another?
I have a second question. Thank you, Chair. It was building on Councillor Penny's comment. How is this programme? How is this programme dovetailed in with the RLDP programme? Because obviously there's competing issues, isn't there, in the RLDP in terms of needing the schools before more houses can be built. Just how we're dovetailing this. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
We work closely with the LDP team and James Harlan's team about this strategic outline programme with the housing developments that they are proposing and bringing forward, and James, and he, with a presentation that he's presented as part of the Education and Social Care Programme Board, has been shared previously. So I think it works very well in parallel with both guidelines really that we have.
Thank you.
Don. Don.
Yeah, sorry, just to confirm, Councillor Cheryl, there is a report coming to EMP on the 24th of July regarding the RLDP and education impact and mitigations. So just so you're aware.
Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Thank you, Lord.
Iawn, da ni wedi cael cynigydd, sef Cynghorydd Austin. Oes 'na rywun yn eilio bod ni'n derbyn yr adroddiad yma? Cynghorydd Tristan yn eilio. Neith pawb ddangos os gwelwch yn dda. Diolch yn fawr iawn bawb, a diolch yn fawr i chi am eich amynedd efo'r cyfarfod yn hwyr yn dechrau heddiw, a diolch yn fawr i chi am drafodaethau synhwyrol a pwrpasol. Diolch yn fawr. Gair cyfarfod.